This video is about testing to see how to set an engine on fire for an enemy tank. And I've done a lot of testing, and I had some theories that I tested in the game, and I've come up with a technique which is going to differ from what other people have said, but I've kind of figured out what to do if you want to increase your chances of setting an engine on fire. There's definitely two ways to hit the engine. One of them will double your chances of setting the engine on fire. And it also requires a little bit more accuracy and a little bit more planning, but it definitely does work, and it's definitely more reliable. What I did was I took a Tier 9 medium tank, which is the Leopard Prototype A, and I put it in the training room, and I assaulted it with three different tanks. One is the BT-7, another one is the Kolo Husenka, and the other one was the M41 HMC artillery. I did the most testing, obviously, with the BT-7. And I tested different spots on the back of the tank, which is right here. I tested different distances. I tested different types of rounds. And I recorded the number of penetrations, the average damage, how much damage I had to do before there was a critical hit on the engine, any special notices, and whether or not the critical hits matched from the shooting end as well as on the receiving end. What I concluded is that the best way to damage the engine is to hit low on the rear or even on the side of the enemy tank, but I would say preferably on the rear, right in the center. You want to hit right in the center on the bottom of the enemy rear, which is where the axle would be, and you probably want to be as close to the enemy as possible, and you probably want to use APCR rounds, and you want to use rounds that do a lot of damage, high alpha damage. Other people have reported rounds that do low alpha damage. It's incorrect and it's not true. So I tested all those different conditions, and absolutely the high alpha damage makes a difference, and everything else that I just mentioned makes a difference. Now, the first thing that I did was I tested the location, which is my aim point. And I knew that the engine is not as big as the entire tank. If you can look at drawings, and it takes up about a third of the rear of the tank in terms of width, and about the height, I don't know, maybe a third of the height also, or half the height. And this is for most tanks. It's not for every tank. It's rare that the engine is going to be under the turret because the turret has people in it, and it has a different purpose. So the engine is usually located either behind the turret or in some cases in front of the turret. So you can kind of predict where the engine is going to be. You don't want to hit to the side of the engine. That's where the fuel tanks will be. And I did some experiments there, and I rarely hit the fuel tank. I think I hit it once, and it was when I was shooting from the side. And we're talking about, I don't know, a couple hundred penetrations, and I hit the fuel tank once. But I hit the engine, I don't know, I'd say a good 20 or 30 times. So there's a lot of space in there that, as far as I know, you're not going to hit anything. The other thing that I noticed was being closer did increase the chance that I hit the engine. All the shots that I did when I was closer hit that engine sooner than all the shots from when I was further away. So that's definitely a fact. So basically, my best case when I was 25 meters was greater than than all of my best cases when I was at 14 meters. Being 10 meters closer did make a difference. So I tried at least three different types of rounds. I tried HE, AP, and APCR. I'm not going to say that one is better than the other, but I honestly believe that APCR is better than AP. In fact, I think I did prove that. If you look at the testing here with the Kolo Husenka, the APCR rounds did penetrate sooner than the AP rounds. These are the AP rounds. I'm going to pull up the average. The average was 11. 11 penetrations before I was able to get a critical hit. Now, if we check APCR, the average was only 8, which means I needed less penetrations with the APCR round to get a critical hit on the engine as compared to the AP. Why do I say it doesn't matter that much? You know, it does matter. You're still gonna do critical hits, whether you use AP or APCR. However, when you use APCR, you will get them faster, quicker, sooner. You'll have to take less shots to get those critical hits, but it can still be done with AP. In terms of HE, when I did it with the artillery, with the high alpha damage, I set the engine on fire 3 out of 5 times. And I had a critical hit almost every shot. So that is, 60% success rate. When I use the AP and the APCR, I rarely set the engine on fire. For example, with the Kolo Husenka, all these tests that I did, it looks like 13 different tests, I did not set the engine on fire a single time. With the BT-7, I set it on fire 3 times. However, I did get a lot of critical hits. I had one example here where I had 5 critical hits on the engine. Actually, I don't know if they were all on the engine, because when I was firing it said 5 critical hits, but when I looked at the report, it only reported 2 critical hits on the engine. So it was a little bit confusing, and I'm not sure exactly what it means. But when I did turn the audio on, when I was listening to the audio from the tank receiving hits, it was reporting when I had more than 2 critical hits, it was reporting that I was hitting the engine. So the rounds, when I say they don't make a difference, what I mean is that the AP rounds will still do it, but the APCR does increase your chance, which means it's going to happen a lot sooner. The last measure that I did was when I got my first critical hit and it said that the engine was damaged, I recorded how much damage I had done to the tank. And what I discovered is that when I was shooting low on the tank, which is where the axle goes across between the 2 wheels at the bottom of the rear of the tank, or of course next to the axle on the side of the tank, I had done less damage to the tank when I was able to hit that engine. So we're going to look at the averages again. These shots were low on the tank, all of these. And the average was 387 damage that I did to the Leopard. Now we're talking about the damage to the Leopard. Now all of these were not low except for 1. And the average was 8. I'm going to show you the testing methodology. This is where I got the most successes along the bottom here. So I'm just going to keep on firing.
Enemy armor is hit. Enemy is hit. The engine is smoke damaged.
So as you can see, it said the engine is smoking. That was the 3rd shot that I made. And that was what the enemy tank reported.
Penetration.
It's shot number 4.
Critical engine damage. We're stuck here.
So on shot number 3 and number 5, I was able to do engine damage.
Penetration. Enemy is hit. Enemy armor is damaged. Penetration. We're dead for it.
And in 10 shots, the tank is dead. So far, I've done 6 different games with the artillery to try and set the Leopard on fire. And each game I do 3 critical hits, and I've set the engine on fire 3 times.
We lost half of our engine power.
So you can hear from the audio from the enemy tank that I did hit the engine. Okay, so on that shot, I raised the aim point to a higher point, and I was able to set it on fire. And the reason why I raised the aim point is because in the other battles that I tested it, I used a higher aim point, and I successfully set the engine on fire, usually on the first shot. You can damage the engine by hitting almost any location on the back of the tank. However, the lower part doubles the chance of damaging the engine or also setting it on fire. So I tested hitting here and here. And here. There's supposed to be a fuel tank here. I was not able to damage the fuel tank, except for when I did it from the side. Shot here. And over here. And I did over here. So in that case, you can hear the notice from the enemy tank that I did hit the engine. So equally, any of those spots that I just shot had an equal chance of a critical hit on the engine. Now, as I said, I was twice as likely to damage the engine by hitting anywhere along the bottom here, which is the axle. And I checked the axle. If you look at the tank tread, there's one tread, you can see how it gets thinner on the bottom, and they're a little bit wider, even though they're all the same size. This is around the point where the axle is going to be right here, and along this line is where I had much higher success rate hitting the engine. That includes this spot right here, and over here. Most of the testing that I did to set the engine on fire was done at around 25 meters. And I tested a few different locations. I tested this lower piece right here, and I tested this little hatch, and I tested the center of this hook, and I tested the hinge. And surprisingly, I actually set the tank on fire, I think the first time I hit the hinge. But I had the most success hitting low on the tank, which is right over here. In fact, it was very, very predictable. Was able to set it on fire in about half the number of shots by hitting this lower point. Okay, so you can see from the message from the enemy tank that the engine is smoking. I tested a few different spots. One of the places that I tested was right here in the back. And I used regular rounds. And I was never able to do a critical hit at that location. I tested over here. When you aim for this location, you hit the track. Well, that actually haven't happened. That I haven't done yet. Okay, so I also aimed over here. And I used the AP rounds. Right now I have AG rounds loaded.
Drive on.
And I tested over here.
We're done for. Everyone get out.
I did a test where I aimed right behind the wheel. You have to avoid the track because you don't want to actually hit the track. So I aimed for this empty space over here, and I was unable to damage the engine or the transmission or any part of it. However, I was able to injure the driver.
Enemy armor is damaged. Enemy is hit.
So apparently the driver is right here.
Enemy armor is hit. Penetration. Enemy is hit.
Even though I did not injure the driver right here, I did do it during a testing process.
Enemy armor is hit.
The tank I'm shooting with is a BT-7 artillery. I have HE rounds loaded. The enemy tank is the Leopard prototype A. And I did a test to see if I could set the engine on fire by shooting at the lower front plate. My best guess is to hit it right in the center.
Critical hit. Critical hit.
And it doesn't do anything.
Critical hit.
I've hit it here 30 or 40 times. It does 5 to 10, maybe 20 damage per shot. It does not seem to set the engine on fire. I've done hundreds upon hundreds of hit points of damage, over the course of 30 or 40 shots, and it never said it did any critical hit in any way whatsoever on the engine or any other part. It does say it's doing critical hits, but it's not identifying any particular module that is being damaged. So I don't think that it can be done, at least with this tank. I haven't tried a tank that does more damage. So in conclusion, if you want to increase the chance that you set the engine on fire, you want to shoot at the rear of the tank. Alternatively, your second choice is to hit the side of the tank. You want to aim for the bottom of the tank, along the axle or transmission. Use APCR or HE rounds to increase your penetration ability. Use rounds with high alpha damage. You have to bring the hit points of the internal module down to 0. Be as close to the tank as possible. That might not be necessary with AG, but if you're using AP or APCR, being closer to the tank, the difference between 25 meters and 15 meters or 10 meters might actually improve your ability to penetrate the rear armor and into the engine. If you have any questions or comments, please post below.